What happens when one of Hollywood's most beloved actors walks onto a talk show stage expecting a friendly conversation, only to be met with accusations, interruptions, and a shocking level of disrespect that leaves the entire studio audience gasping? In just 28 seconds of one comment, a morning television staple would reveal a side of itself that no one saw coming, and what started as a routine interview would explode into one of the most uncomfortable moments in daytime television history. Ryan Reynolds arrived at the View studio that morning, like he had done countless times before. The promotional tour for his latest film was in full swing, and he expected the usual banter, the playful questions about his family, maybe some jokes about his rivalry with Hugh Jackman. He walked onto that stage with his signature smile, waving to the audience who erupted in cheers and applause. He took his seat at the table, surrounded by the panel. Whoopi Goldberg sat at the center, flanked by Joy Behar, Sunny Hostin, Sarah Haynes, and Alyssa Farah Griffin. The interview started innocently enough. Sarah kicked things off with a question about his new movie, and Ryan delivered a charming answer that had the audience laughing. He talked about the stunts, the cast, the fun they had on set. Everything seemed normal. But then Whoopi leaned forward and her tone shifted. "So, Ryan," Whoopi said, her voice taking on an edge that made Ryan's smile falter slightly. "You've built this whole brand around being the funny guy, the relatable husband, the down-to-earth celebrity. But let's be real here. How much of that is actually you? And how much is just good marketing?" The audience went quiet. Ryan's eyebrows raised slightly, but he kept his composure. "Well, I'd like to think I'm pretty authentic," Ryan said carefully. "What you see is generally what you get. I don't think I'm smart enough to maintain a fake persona for this many years." "Right," Whoopi said, but her tone suggested she didn't believe him. "Because I've been in this industry a long time, and I've seen a lot of people play characters off-screen just as much as they do on screen." Joy Behar jumped in, trying to lighten the mood. "Oh, come on, Whoopi. Ryan's one of the good ones, you can tell." But Whoopi wasn't having it. She waved Joy off dismissively. "I'm just saying what everyone's thinking," Whoopi continued. "You make these movies that are essentially the same character over and over again. I'm the sarcastic guy with the quippy one-liners. When are we going to see you actually act?" The audience gasped. Ryan's smile disappeared completely now. He shifted in his seat, clearly caught off guard by the hostile line of questioning. "I'm not sure I understand where this is coming from," Ryan said, his voice steady, but his discomfort obvious. "I've done a variety of roles over my career. I've done dramas, comedies, action films." "Name one dramatic role that anyone remembers," Whoopi shot back. Sunny Hostin looked uncomfortable, glancing between Whoopi and Ryan. "I think Ryan's been great in everything I've seen him in," she offered weakly. "You're entitled to your opinion," Whoopi said to Sunny without looking at her, keeping her eyes fixed on Ryan. "But I'm entitled to mine. And my opinion is that Hollywood has a problem with elevating mediocrity, and I think you're a perfect example of that." The audience audibly reacted now, with several people letting out shocked sounds. Ryan sat back in his chair, his jaw tightening. He was clearly trying to decide how to respond. "Mediocrity," Ryan repeated, letting the word hang in the air. "That's a strong word." "It's an honest word," Whoopi said. "And I think if we're going to have you on this show, we should be honest. I'm tired of these interviews where we just blow smoke and pretend everything is wonderful. You're here to promote a movie that, let's face it, is probably going to be just another forgettable action comedy that makes money but contributes nothing meaningful to cinema." Alyssa Farah Griffin looked absolutely mortified. "Whoopi, I think that's a bit harsh," she said. "Ryan's movies bring joy to millions of people. That's not nothing." "Joy," Whoopi scoffed. "Is that what we're calling it now? Mindless entertainment that asks nothing of its audience?" Ryan leaned forward now, his nice guy demeanor starting to crack. "You know what, Whoopi? I came here thinking we were going to have a conversation. but it's pretty clear you had an agenda before I even walked through that door. My agenda is honesty, Whoopi fired back. Something that seems to be lacking in your carefully crafted public image. Carefully crafted? Ryan's voice rose slightly. I'm sorry that I don't come on talk shows and insult my guests to make myself feel superior. That must be your carefully crafted image. The audience erupted in a mix of gasps and supportive applause for Ryan. What Whoopi's face hardened. Excuse me? She said, her voice dangerously low. You want to talk about feeling superior? You walk in here with your perfect hair and your perfect teeth and your perfect little jokes, acting like you're God's gift to entertainment. I never said any of that, Ryan protested. You're putting words in my mouth. Joy tried to intervene again. Maybe we should talk about something else, she suggested nervously. Ryan, tell us about working with your co-stars. But Whoopi cut her off. No, we're going to finish this conversation. Ryan thinks he can come on my show and insult me. Your show? Ryan said, his voice incredulous. Last time I checked, this was called The View, not The Whoopi Show. And I didn't insult you. I responded to you insulting me for the last 5 minutes straight. Sunny nodded slightly, clearly agreeing with Ryan even though she seemed afraid to say it out loud. Sarah looked down at her notes, clearly wishing she was anywhere else. You know what your problem is? Whoopi continued, pointing her finger at Ryan. You're used to everyone kissing up to you. Everyone telling you how great you are. Well, I'm not going to do that. Someone needs to tell you the truth. The truth? Ryan said, and now he was angry. Or your opinion? Because you seem to be confusing the two. You don't like my movies? Fine. That's your right. But coming at me personally, questioning my authenticity, calling me mediocre, that's not truth. That's just mean. I'm not being mean, Whoopi insisted. I'm being real. No, Ryan said firmly. Real would be having a respectful conversation about our different perspectives on film and entertainment. Mean is ambushing a guest with attacks, and then acting like you're doing everyone a favor. The audience started applauding again, more enthusiastically this time. Several people stood up. Whoopi's face turned red. You need to check your privilege, Whoopi said, her voice rising. You have no idea what it's like to actually struggle in this industry, to have to fight for every role. You just coast by on your looks and your charm. My privilege? Ryan looked stunned. You're going to lecture me about privilege while you sit here using your platform to bully someone who came here in good faith? That's rich. Joy put her hand on Whoopi's arm. Whoopi, maybe we should take a break, she said quietly. Whoopi shook her off. We're not taking a break. He wants to come on here and act like he's better than me. We're going to deal with this right now. I never said I was better than you, Ryan said, his voice getting louder. But I'm starting to question whether you're better than this behavior. Because this isn't okay. This isn't how you treat people. Don't you dare tell me how to treat people, Whoopi snapped. I've been doing this for decades. I've earned the right to speak my mind. Speaking your mind is different from being cruel, Ryan countered. And right now, you're being cruel. Alyssa spoke up again, her voice shaking slightly. I think Ryan has a point. This has gone too far. Whoopi turned on her. Stay out of this, Alyssa. This is between me and him. But it's not, Sarah finally said, finding her voice. We're all here. We're all part of this panel. And I think we all feel really uncomfortable right now. Well, maybe you should all grow thicker skin, Whoopi said dismissively. This is television. This is what real conversations look like. Ryan stood up suddenly, and the entire studio went silent. He carefully removed his microphone, his hands steady despite the visible anger on his face. Real conversations involve mutual respect, Ryan said quietly. They involve listening to each other, not just waiting for your turn to attack. I've done hundreds of interviews, and I've never been treated like this. I don't care how long you've been in this business or how many awards you've won. That doesn't give you the right to demean people. Where do you think you're going? Whoopi demanded. I'm leaving, Ryan said simply, because I don't have to sit here and be insulted. And honestly, I feel sorry for you. You have this incredible platform, and you're using it to tear people down instead of building them up. That says a lot more about you than it does about me. You walk out that door, you're proving everything I said about you," Whoopi called after him. "You can't handle real criticism." Ryan turned back, and his expression was one of disappointment rather than anger now. "This wasn't criticism," he said. "Criticism is constructive. It helps people grow. What you did was just cruelty dressed up as honesty. And I genuinely hope you figure out the difference someday. Because right now, you're embarrassing yourself, you're embarrassing this show, and you're embarrassing everyone who works here." He gestured to the other panelists. "These women tried to help you. They tried to steer you back to a reasonable conversation, and you shut them down, dismissed them, because you were so focused on whatever point you thought you were making. That's not strength. That's not honesty. That's just ego." The audience erupted in applause as Ryan walked off the stage. Several people gave him a standing ovation. Someone shouted, "We love you, Ryan," and others joined in with supportive calls. Whoopi sat there, her face a mask of indignation, while the other panelists looked absolutely shell-shocked. Joy's mouth was hanging open slightly. Sarah had tears in her eyes. Sunny looked furious. Alyssa was shaking her head in disbelief. Joy cleared her throat awkwardly. "Well, we're going to take a quick break," she said to the camera. But Whoopi wasn't done. "Let him go," she said loudly, her voice carrying across the studio. "We don't need people like that who can't handle a little heat." Sunny finally found her courage. "Whoopi, that wasn't a little heat. That was a lot, and it was uncomfortable to watch." "You think I care about comfortable?" Whoopi said. "I care about truth." "But whose truth?" Sarah asked softly. "Because from where I was sitting, it looked like you were just being cruel to someone who came here to promote his work." "Cruel?" Whoopi's voice rose. "Cruel is pretending that everything in Hollywood is wonderful when it's not. Cruel is letting people coast by without ever challenging them." "But you weren't challenging him professionally," Sunny interjected. "You were attacking him personally. There's a huge difference." "I don't see a difference," Whoopi snapped. "The personal and the professional are intertwined. His whole brand is based on his personality." Alyssa shook her head. "That doesn't give you the right to question his authenticity or call him mediocre. Those were personal attacks, pure and simple." The audience murmured in agreement, and several people clapped. Whoopi's face flushed with anger. "Oh, so now the audience is against me too?" she said. "Fine. Let me tell you all something. I've been in this industry longer than most of you have been alive. I've earned the right to speak my mind without worrying about hurting someone's feelings." "Speaking your mind is one thing," Joy said carefully, finally finding her voice. "But Whoopi, you have to admit, that got out of hand. Ryan came here expecting a normal interview, and instead, he got ambushed." "Ambushed?" Whoopi scoffed. "So I asked him legitimate questions about his career." "No," Sarah said firmly. "You asked him loaded questions designed to make him look bad. And when he tried to defend himself, you escalated. That's not an interview. That's an attack." Backstage, Ryan was surrounded by producers apologizing profusely. His publicist was on the phone, presumably doing damage control. But Ryan himself seemed remarkably calm, just sad. "I really tried," he said to one of the producers. "I tried to keep it respectful, but there's only so much you can take." "You were a saint in there," the producer said. "Honestly, most people would have walked out way sooner, or said something much worse." Another producer chimed in. "We're all horrified by what happened. That's not who we are as a show. At least, it's not who we're supposed to be." Ryan's phone buzzed constantly in his pocket. He pulled it out and glanced at the screen. Messages from fellow actors, directors, friends, all expressing their support and outrage at what had happened. "Look at this," he said, showing his publicist a text from Hugh Jackman that read, "Mate, I just watched that live. Are you okay? Want me to come down there and have a word with her?" Despite everything, Ryan smiled slightly. "At least Hugh's got my back," he said. His publicist looked up from her own phone, her expression grim. "It's already trending on every platform. The clips are everywhere, and the response is overwhelmingly in your favor. People are calling for Whoopi to apologize." "She won't," Ryan said with certainty. "People like that never apologize. They just double down and blame everyone else." "You're probably right," his manager agreed. "But that doesn't mean you have to engage with it. You said your piece. That's enough." A production assistant knocked on the door. "Mr. Reynolds, your car is here whenever you're ready." "Thanks," Ryan said. "I'm ready now." He gathered his belongings and headed for the exit. As he walked through the hallway, crew members stopped what they were doing to watch him pass. A camera operator gave him a thumbs up. A sound technician mouthed, "Sorry." A wardrobe assistant called out, "You handled that perfectly." Ryan acknowledged them all with a nod and a small wave, appreciating the support from people who understood what had really happened in that studio. Back on the stage, the panel was clearly fractured. Joy was trying to smooth things over, but even she looked upset. "I think we all need to take a moment and reflect on what just happened," Joy said carefully. "What happened is that a spoiled actor couldn't handle being challenged," Whoopi said stubbornly. Alyssa shook her head. "That's not what happened, and you know it. You went after him from the first question. You didn't give him a chance." "I don't have to give anyone a chance," Whoopi said. "This is my table." "Our table," Sonny corrected quietly. "It's supposed to be our table." The audience was still buzzing, people talking amongst themselves, phones out, clearly recording and messaging about what they'd just witnessed. The energy in the room had completely shifted from the excitement of a celebrity interview to the awkward tension of a public confrontation. One of the floor managers approached the table, whispering something to Joy. She nodded and turned to the camera. "We're going to take a longer break than usual," she announced. "We'll be right back." As soon as they cut to commercial, Whoopi stood up and walked off the stage without a word to any of the other panelists. Sarah put her head in her hands. "That was horrible," she said. "That poor man." "He handled it better than I would have," Alyssa said. "I would have lost it way earlier." Joy sighed deeply. "I don't know what got into her. I've never seen her go after a guest like that." "She was looking for a fight," Sonny said. "You could tell from the beginning. She had that look in her eye." Back in the green room, Ryan was packing up his things. His team was still apologizing, still trying to explain, but he waved them off. "It's not your fault," he told them. "Sometimes people just show you who they really are. You can't control that." His phone was already blowing up with messages from friends and colleagues who had been watching live or had seen clips online. The moment was already going viral, spreading across social media at lightning speed. But Ryan wasn't interested in looking at any of it. "I just want to go home," he said quietly. "I want to hug my wife and my kids and remember that most people are kind." One of the younger producers, a woman in her 20s, approached him hesitantly. "Mr. Reynolds," she said, "I just wanted to say that I thought you were incredibly gracious in there, way more than she deserved." Ryan gave her a tired smile. "Thanks. That means a lot." "For what it's worth," the producer continued, "everyone back here is on your side. What she did was wrong." Ryan nodded, appreciating the sentiment, even though it didn't change what had happened. Another producer, an older man who had been with the show for years, shook his head in disbelief. "In all my time working here, I've never seen anything like that," he said. "We've had heated debates, sure, but never an outright attack on a guest, especially not someone who came here in good faith." Ryan's publicist was furiously typing on her phone, trying to get ahead of the narrative. "We need a statement ready," she said. "This is going to be everywhere within the hour." "No statement," Ryan said firmly. What I said in there is my statement. I'm not going to feed into this. But Ryan, his publicist protested, people are going to speculate. They're going to make up stories. Let them, Ryan said. The truth is on camera. Anyone who watches that footage will see exactly what happened. I don't need to explain myself beyond what I already said. His manager, who had been silently observing the whole time, finally spoke up. I'm proud of you, man. You handled that with so much class. A lot of people would have lost their cool way before you did. I almost did, Ryan admitted. But I kept thinking, if I blow up, if I match her energy, then I'm just as bad. I didn't want to give her that satisfaction. On the studio floor, the other panelists were still processing. Alyssa was visibly upset, her voice shaking as she spoke. I can't believe she called him mediocre on live television, she said. Who does that? It's who invites someone onto their show just to tear them apart. Someone who's forgotten what this show is supposed to be about, Sarah said. We're supposed to have conversations, debates even, but with respect. What Whoopi did wasn't respectful. Joy looked torn, caught between loyalty to her longtime co-host and her own sense of what was right. She's been under a lot of stress lately, Joy offered weakly. That's not an excuse, Sunny said firmly. We're all under stress. We all have bad days, but we don't take it out on guests who have done nothing wrong. Alyssa stood up from the table, pacing behind her chair. I'm seriously questioning whether I can go back out there and pretend like everything's okay. Because it's not okay. What just happened was cruel and unprofessional. Sarah nodded in agreement. The audience knows it too. Did you see their faces? They were appalled, and rightfully so. We have a responsibility to our guests, Sunny added. They trust us to provide a safe space for conversation. Whoopi violated that trust in the worst possible way. Joy wrung her hands nervously. I know. But what are we supposed to do? We still have a show to finish. Maybe we should address it head on, Alyssa suggested. Acknowledge that what happened was wrong. Distance ourselves from it. That would be throwing Whoopi under the bus, Joy said hesitantly. She threw herself under the bus, Sarah countered. We're just being honest about what everyone already saw. The makeup artist, who had been standing nearby, pretending not to listen, finally spoke up. For what it's worth, the crew is all talking about how unfair that was to Ryan. Nobody back here thinks Whoopi was right. That seemed to settle something for the panelists. If even the crew, who usually stayed neutral, was taking sides, then it was clear how badly the situation had deteriorated. Meanwhile, in her dressing room, Whoopi was on her phone, presumably talking to her own team. Through the door, raised voices could be heard, though the words weren't clear. Back in the green room, Ryan's publicist was working overtime, fielding calls from news outlets, social media managers, and even other talk shows offering Ryan a platform to tell his side of the story. No, Ryan said firmly, when his publicist suggested he'd do an interview about what happened. I'm not going to turn this into a media circus. What happened happened. People saw it. I don't need to rehash it. But people are going to want to hear from you, his publicist argued. Then they can watch the clip, Ryan said. I said what I needed to say in there. I'm not going to keep talking about it. That just gives her more attention, and frankly, I don't think she deserves it. His publicist looked like she wanted to argue more, but ultimately nodded. You're the boss, she said. Ryan checked his watch. The interview had been scheduled to last 20 minutes. He'd made it less than 10 before everything imploded. 10 minutes that would be replayed, analyzed, and discussed for weeks, if not months to come. On stage, they were getting ready to come back from commercial. Whoopi had returned, her expression stony and unreadable. The other panelists exchanged glances, clearly uncertain about how to proceed. Joy, is you ever the professional, took the lead. Welcome back, she said to the camera, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. As you may have noticed, our interview with Ryan Reynolds ended a bit earlier than expected. He chose to leave, Whoopi interjected, her tone defensive. Sunny looked at her incredulously. Whoopi, he left because the interview became hostile. I was just asking tough questions, Whoopi insisted. There's a difference between tough questions and personal attacks, Alyssa said, her voice stronger now, and what happened crossed that line. The audience, which had been murmuring throughout the commercial break, started applauding in agreement. Whoopi's expression darkened. So, now you're all ganging up on me, she said. No one's ganging up on you, Joy said carefully. But I think we need to acknowledge that what just happened was uncomfortable for everyone, including our audience. Several audience members nodded vigorously. One woman called out, "That was awful to watch." Whoopi turned to face the audience. You want comfortable? Go watch something else. This show has always been about real talk. Real talk doesn't mean being mean, another audience member shouted back. Excuse me, Whoopi said, her voice sharp. I don't need lectures from the audience about how to do my job. A third audience member stood up. But you do need to hear that what you did was wrong. That man came here in good faith, and you attacked him for no reason. Sarah put her hand over her microphone and whispered to Sunny, This is a disaster. I've never seen the audience turn on us like this. Sunny whispered back, They haven't turned on us. They've turned on her. And can you blame them? Whoopi was still facing the audience, her arms crossed defensively. I've been doing this show for years. I know what I'm doing. Then act like it, someone from the audience yelled. The crowd erupted in applause and cheers. Joy tried desperately to regain control. Okay, let's all calm down. We're all entitled to our opinions, but let's remember, we're here to have respectful dialogue. That's what Ryan wanted, Alyssa said pointedly. Respectful dialogue, but he didn't get it. The situation was spiraling. What was supposed to be a lighthearted celebrity interview had turned into a referendum on the show itself, on Whoopi's behavior, on the line between honesty and cruelty. Sarah tried to redirect. I think we should move on to our next segment, she suggested. But the damage was done. The energy in the studio was completely off. The audience was restless. The panelists were divided. And somewhere off stage, Ryan Reynolds was probably already in his car, heading as far away from this disaster as he could get. In the days and weeks that would follow, this moment would be dissected from every angle. Media experts would weigh in. Other celebrities would share their own experiences with hostile interviews. The clip would rack up millions of views across every social media platform. But in this moment, in the studio, there was just the uncomfortable silence of a conversation gone horribly wrong. The kind of silence that speaks louder than any words could. The kind of silence that happens when someone crosses a line they can never uncross. Whoopi sat at the table, her arms crossed, her expression defiant, even as her co-hosts looked at her with varying degrees of disappointment and concern. Joy was trying to salvage the show, moving on to the next topic with forced enthusiasm. Sunny, Sarah, and Alyssa were going through the motions, but their hearts clearly weren't in it anymore. And somewhere in New York City, Ryan Reynolds was probably already home, grateful to be out of that studio, away from that table, free from the bizarre hostility that had blindsided him on what should have been just another stop on a press tour. The interview that was supposed to last 20 minutes and generate some fun promotional clips had instead lasted less than 10 and generated a controversy that no one involved would forget anytime soon. All because one host decided that attacking a guest was more important than treating them with basic human decency. What started as a routine morning show appearance had become a masterclass in how not to conduct an interview, how not to treat a guest, and how quickly things can go wrong when ego overtakes professionalism. And through it all, Ryan Reynolds had maintained his dignity, spoken his truth, and walked away with his head held high, leaving behind a studio full of people who knew they'd just witnessed something that should never have happened.